The time for discussion is coming to an end, and there is no time for hesitation.
After 12 long days, the United Nations Climate Conference is drawing to a close, with no unity in sight.
If they are not able to reach an agreement, this COP will be broadly branded a failure. Everybody has to sign on. It's not just a majority position.
A draft resolution circulated at COP28 in Dubai does not call on nations to phase out fossil fuels.
I need all parties to show even more flexibility to get us to the finish line.
Instead, the draft says nations should take actions that could include reducing fossil fuels.
We have two fairly entrenched positions. We have the oil-rich states that seem to be being led by Saudi Arabia, trying to protect their economic future by dispensing with the words fossil fuel. Then we have a lot of the rest of the world, and being led really by the really vulnerable nations in the Pacific, saying we must have text that says we have to phase out fossil fuels.
The Alliance of Small Island States says their voices are being ignored.
We will not sign our gift certificate. How can you not understand? It is our very survival that is at stake.
It really does bring into question whether or not COP is fit for purpose for what it was designed to achieve, which was to address climate change.
There's a really strong pushback from countries like Saudi Arabia, and I understand that the economies are based on oil. It's important for countries like this to rise above those immediate economic interests and to look at the future of humanity.
Simon Kofe, a former Tuvalu foreign minister and current MP, made headlines with a speech to the conference 2 years ago. He says the current draft agreement is unacceptable.
If we fail to phase out on the use of fossil fuels, which contributes about 80% of greenhouse gas emissions, then we don't stand a chance.
Australia's climate change minister, Chris Bowen, is heading a coalition of countries, including the UK, the US and Japan, which won't sign the resolution until it's strengthened.
Most important is that this COP finishes with a commitment to keep 1.5 degrees of warming alive. And we all know that the future of fossil fuels is key to that.
Australia recently announced $150 million in financing for Pacific climate projects, but has not signed up to a global compensation fund approved at this year's conference to help countries affected by climate change. Álopi Latukefu, a former Pacific Affairs advisor to the Rudd government, says Australia's rhetoric needs to be matched with action.
When it is on our own doorstep and the people of the Torres Strait who are suffering the consequences of climate change, it's important that Australia not only represents the voice of the Pacific, but represents the voice of its own people.
Australia is really siding with the majority of countries around the world, acknowledging that fossil fuels have no future in a world that needs a safe climate.
But the federal government continues to resist calls for a ban on new gas and coal projects, saying fossil fuels are still needed while Australia transitions to renewables.
My understanding of phasing out is that you're making the decision to transition towards renewable energy. So to approve new gas and coal mining projects would be inconsistent with that.
We can come to a conference like this and spout all sorts of high-sounding phrases, but until we actually stop expanding our own fossil fuel activities, we will not be taken seriously.